Welcome to the podcast, The Unselfish Purpose of Life. Over 15 years ago, I started at a radio station with a monthly show on the purpose and value of unfolding the full potential of life. The discussion centered around the most basic value of life, consciousness, and the many angles and disciplines to understand its value in active, daily, responsible life. Consciousness is the basis for our perception of the world. It comprises levels of wakefulness, awareness, and that's a very brief version of the definition. So in future podcasts, we will discuss more about consciousness, but every podcast will have some points to make about the importance of unfolding more of your potential, more of our inner awareness, consciousness, since it is the main point of the podcast. Many of the radio shows I did, the station translated those into podcasts, and so they're on the station's website. And since podcasts are more popular today, I decided to do a little editing and updating and use a different placement for greater exposure. That radio station, by the way, is not public or commercial, but listener supported, so they actually play the most interesting music and have a few inspiring talk shows, so that's why I had one. So if you want to find it, it's streaming online, wpkn.org. So it's wpkn.org. And some of the podcasts that I did those years ago are actually interviews with people, most of them phone interviews, and they're experts in their field. So today is one of those podcasts that I'm happy to share with you. So let me introduce myself. My name is Kathy Connor, and I've been exploring the field of human potential for over 50 years. I am a certified teacher of the Transcendental Meditation Program, and I teach this specific and very special technique in the public. In this podcast, entitled Maharishi Ayurveda with Dr. Stuart Rothenberg, we discuss this valuable and important science from the Vedic tradition and its impact on improving health. So again, it's a phone interview I did in 2021, so that was in the middle of that COVID epidemic, you remember that? So I felt it was important to hear this approach to health so we as a society can become more aware of the simple yet profound lifestyle changes we can make for the human physiology to function well, actually function best. Ayurveda is an ancient science of health for mind, body, and in fact, one can even say that the Transcendental Meditation technique can be found in its prescriptions for balance, particularly mental health, but also physical health. And I'm particularly interested to hear from these genuine experts who have many years, decades in fact, of experience so that we have the right and correct understanding of this valuable approach to health. Dr. Rothenberg is definitely one of those experts. And one final point to make before we get started with the interview. The title of the podcast is Maharishi Ayurveda with Dr. Stuart Rothenberg. In the 1980s, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who brought the Transcendental Meditation technique to the world from this Vedic tradition, he sought out the most advanced physicians of Ayurveda, called Vaidya's, so that this knowledge, which had been distorted for many years, was the most authentic that it can be, so that we get best results. And appreciating that he made sure what we got was the highest value, we call this aspect Maharishi Ayurveda. So this is the topic for today, how this ancient science of healing can encourage best health for everyone. Please enjoy. Health has been on our minds this past year for sure, probably a lot more than usual. And to take a deeper look into how the body can achieve a more balanced state, really the mind-body can achieve a more balanced state of health and well-being, we've often discussed the ancient science of Ayurveda. And I'm really excited and happy to tell you that today I have a very special guest who is one of the premier experts in Maharishi Ayurveda in the United States. Dr. Stuart Rothenberg is National Director, Medical Director of the Transcendental Meditation Health Professionals Association and Maharishi Ayurveda Association of America. a fellow of the American Academy of Family Physicians. He was a Pulitzer Scholar at Columbia College in New York and received his MD degree from New York University School of Medicine, and he completed his postgraduate training in family medicine at the University of Rochester, New York. Dr. Rothenberg was one of the first physicians in the U.S. to be trained not only as a teacher of the TM technique, but also an expert in Ayurvedic medicine. He co-founded the first physician-directed Maharishi Ayurveda medical centers in the United States, specializing in the treatment and prevention of chronic disease using an integrative mind-body approach that includes transcendental meditation. He has co-authored several published studies documenting the effects of these programs, and he has presented these findings at leading medical schools and research centers, both nationally and abroad. And over the last 25 years, Dr. Rothenberg has served as National Director of Postgraduate Training Programs in Maharishi Ayurveda and has trained over 1,500 healthcare professionals in the U.S. and abroad. And most recently, he has directed training for healthcare professionals in integrative mind-body medicine and Ayurveda in collaboration with Scripps Center for Integrative Medicine in San Diego, the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine, the University of Maryland Center for Integrative Medicine in Baltimore, and other academic centers. So we're very pleased with his great background that he can explain more to us about this amazing science. So Stuart, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kathy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm very happy to hear from you because as I said, we have spoken about Ayurveda in the past, but to have an expert discuss it with us, someone of your caliber, we're very happy to hear your explanation. So maybe in the simplest terms, we can even just start with defining Ayurveda and telling us a little bit more about its value in our search today for better health.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, so really my journey with Ayurveda, the reason I became interested in Ayurveda, and it goes back to my medical training, is my perception that while I was getting an excellent medical education, but an awful lot of disease and an awful lot of distress that my patients were coming to me with, I really wasn't able to make much of an impact on. And as I went into medical practice as a young family doctor, and I began to look at the statistics on this, I realized, every year they publish statistics, for example, like how many people are suffering with chronic diseases and what is the budget, the healthcare budget in the U.S. and things like that. It became clear that there's some missing knowledge that we don't have, even doctors highly trained in conventional medicine. For example, recent statistics released by the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, indicate that 50% of adult Americans are suffering from chronic disease.
Oh, wow.
At least one chronic disease, yes. And that is now increasing at a rate of about 0.5 to 1% per year. And as on the finance side, chronic conditions are now accounting for 86% of healthcare spending in the U.S., about $2.9 trillion annually. And what's also interesting is a recent article in Medical Economics said that about 75% of these dollars of our current healthcare spending is attributable to unhealthy lifestyle behaviors, which are all, potentially modifiable. So we love to think that we have the most wonderful healthcare system in the world, but the evidence is that we're severely lacking.
Oh, wow. Those are some scary statistics. That means at least half of us adults have some chronic issue, and often, we don't know how to address it to improve our health. We just kind of learn how to live with it.
Exactly. Yeah, so there's a need for some new knowledge, and my interest turned to Ayurveda, which is not new knowledge. It's the most ancient knowledge of health on the planet, And but Kathy, when something has survived so long as Ayurveda, it's thousands of years old, and is found to be applicable for modern healthcare, then you feel secure in at least applying those principles, in healthcare. And I found as I went along, and after my training in Ayurveda, I began using it more and more in my family practice, that it really, in many very significant ways, filled these gaps in conventional, medical care, particularly in this area of prevention and treatment of chronic diseases.
Well, I'm sure that it's much more satisfying when you can use this modality in addition to the other modalities you have to use, and that you can see real improvement because, I have, as I mentioned, spoken about Ayurveda before, and my concern and reason I continue to do this show is because it's important for the listener, those of us out in the world living day to day, that we recognize there are other things we can add to our routine to improve our quality of life. And those things tend to be of a subtler nature, but they're very powerful tools. And Ayurveda tends to run the gamut from the subtle to the gross. So it has lots of modalities that can be useful and practical in daily life.
Right, exactly. And as you said so beautifully in your opening comments, it's really, what we really are is a body-mind or mind-body system, and it's kind of hard to say where one ends and the other begins. There's a continuum there. And Ayurveda has been aware of that and said that since time immemorial. So states of mind, states of emotion, issues like stress and so forth play a huge role in our health. And on the other hand, the quality of the body, what we take into the body and so forth, what we expose the body to, has a huge effect on the quality of the mind, our moods, our emotions, our quality of thinking. So it's a two-way street, and it's going on all the time.
Yeah, and it's so important that we're addressing both angles because we really want to have as best health as possible, not just to placate and get by. And we can see what's happening in our society today, and I'm hoping people are looking inward and deciding, well, what else can I do to improve the quality of my health so that I can enjoy a better quality of life? And that's really the theme of the show. And we mostly talk about the mind and consciousness, but like you said, they're so intimately connected. I like what you said, where one starts, the other begins. And it's hard to find that fine line. But one of the things I was hoping we could discuss for a few minutes is the profound connection of Ayurveda to the mind and consciousness particularly, or the intelligence of nature. Because what I have been noticing the past number of years when I'm teaching the transcendental meditation technique to the public is many people are familiar now with Ayurveda. They've heard of it, they even have looked into it, and maybe some of them are even starting to practice some of the principles of it. But I want to make sure we're covering some more profound territory here, because a lot of people are getting their knowledge from what I call magazine quizzes about one particular thing they've heard about, or the doshas. And there's so much more to Ayurveda that we really want to start getting that information available to people, that it's a profound science of health. And can you tell us a little bit more about those principles, the intelligence of nature, for example?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so intelligence of nature, that is a concept that I never would have heard in my medical school or postgraduate training. Honestly, Kathy, if I had said something like the body has an inner intelligence, I would have been regarded, as kind of a hippie or outlier. Of course, I'm a senior generation now, so this goes back a number of decades. Now things have changed a lot. There's a huge interest in what's called integrative medicine in the U.S., with half of U.S. medical schools are now including courses in integrative medicine, and a major theme of integrative medicine is integration of mind and body. So this has really changed since the early days when I first became interested. But as you said, the bedrock principle of Ayurveda is that the body does have an inner intelligence. And even though the body is physical, no question about it, but everything that makes the body work is really, at the most fundamental level, is not physical. It's, when we know this now from modern physics, that what appears to be physical particles, atoms, molecules, and so forth, ultimately are different patterns of vibration of quantum fields, different fields of energy and matter, ultimately unified, as Albert Einstein pointed, to a underlying unified field from which all matter and energy emerge in terms of patterns of spin, or there's now the superstring theory and so forth, vibration, which then go on to precipitate out or manifest as material molecules. So Ayurveda was really onto something when thousands of years ago it said that the body is essentially not material, and that it's made of intelligence or patterns of intelligence or patterns of consciousness. So now you mentioned the three doshas, and that's a very important bedrock principle of Ayurveda. When as matter emerges from intelligence, unmanifest, non-physical intelligence, then it does so, according to Ayurveda, in three streams or in three modes, and these are the three doshas I can talk more about in a moment, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. But before leaving the field of intelligence, because it's so important, and it's easy to gloss over it because it's so abstract that people very naturally want to go to, okay, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, so interesting, and what we eat and so forth, which we can talk about. But if one is in contact with, on the mental, through the mental side, through the mind, that field of consciousness within, that unified field which is governing all the activity of the body, for example, through transcendental meditation, which I understand you've talked about a lot on the show, then everything else that we do on the physical level to balance the three doshas, to eat properly, to create better immunity, to live life more in sync with the natural rhythms of nature, to go to bed early, get up early, all those things that are recommended by Ayurveda work so much better. It's like if you're in transcendental meditation, we talk about transcending. Transcending means it's a technique that allows the individual to go beyond the excited, superficial, surface thinking level of the mind, the turbulent day-to-day thinking level, and go to more inner, more quiet and refined and serene levels of thinking, and ultimately transcending, going beyond even those, to that unified level within, pure silence, pure unmanifest unified intelligence. That is that level that's at the basis of the mind-body system. If we're doing that, meditating, for example, with transcendental meditation, doing it regularly, then it's like plowing the field. It's plowing the field of the mind-body system. And when a field is plowed, or we could say plowed and fertilized, then everything we do on that field, we plant seeds, we throw seeds here and there, it's just going to sprout so much more beautifully and robustly than if we hadn't first prepared the field. So, and I can tell you this from decades of primary care medical experience, that it's really true, and there's quite a lot of research, over 400 peer-reviewed published studies on transcendental meditation alone, showing a wide range of health benefits and improvements in chronic diseases that illustrate this point, that if we just do this one thing, then everything else that we do on a physical level or whatever it may be is just going to work much better, because it's like we're plowing the underlying field.
Well, that's beautiful, because that's pretty much what we talk about on the show, is that the inner supports the outer. And to enliven that intelligence of the physiology, which seems to be at the heart of Ayurveda, and then the modalities, they work together, but without the plowing the field or the foundation, that's probably not as effective.
Exactly. And also, this is lifestyle medicine. A lot of Ayurveda is lifestyle medicine. So when I see a patient and say they're overweight or obese, or they have heart disease or diabetes or any one of a number of chronic disorders that are so prevalent these days, then I want them to change. Almost always they're doing something, quote unquote, wrong in terms of balanced lifestyle, living in harmony with the cycles of nature. But if they do the one thing, which is to learn to meditate, and I generally recommend transcendental meditation because of the research behind it and my own personal experience with it, it's just easier for them to implement these changes. For example, I had, in my very early years, a young physician just out of training, one of my first patients had a smoking problem, was smoking a lot, and that's obvious. You don't have to study Ayurveda to know. Everyone knows that's bad for your health. It's one of the worst risk factors for cancer, for heart disease, and so forth. But I tried to get him to stop, of course, using conventional, counseling and inspiration, all that, smoking cessation programs. No, it didn't work. I recommended transcendental meditation, and I've never taught my own patients TM, although I'm qualified as a teacher. I always refer them to the local teacher because I want to keep my two roles separate. When he learned transcendental meditation, I didn't even know when he finally did, when I recommended. He came back to me maybe, the next time I saw him was 9 months, a year later, and I said, okay, I'm going through a checklist. So how are you doing with your smoking? Smoking, he said, well, I gave that up. He said, you recommended I learn transcendental meditation. I did that, he said, and I gave that up within weeks. He said, what happened was I forgot to take, after about 3 weeks of meditating, I found myself at work and I had forgotten to bring my cigarettes, and I went into a minor panic, and then I said to myself, no, you can do this, he said, and I never looked back. He said, I didn't miss it. I didn't crave it anymore, and I feel so much better, and this had been, for many months now. And that was a signal to me as a young doctor that this is something really powerful, that it helps people to gain that. You can use the word willpower when you come to this lifestyle medicine area where you want people to make these changes. Willpower, yeah, it's a useful term. But it's honestly when the person is meditating, especially with TM, it's not really willpower. It's discipline. It's definitely a kind of a discipline, but it's a kind of a joy that's experienced. It's so much easier for them to relinquish these health-damaging habits and take on the more health-supporting habits.
Well, it's interesting you're using that example because I have also seen a similar thing. And very quickly, I had a story years back where a gentleman came and said to me, I want to stop smoking, and so I'm going to do TM to stop smoking. And I said, no, don't do that. Just start meditating. Let's see what happens. And he did, but it happened so naturally because nobody was telling him to, but he just came back one day and said, I didn't like it anymore. Just stop. It wasn't doing it for me. And I think, when you were saying your story, I was thinking, a lot of what happens in that transcendental field is the mind becomes more expanded and there's less boundary. And so when it comes back into the boundaries of life, there's more flexibility. And so you make different decisions, and those decisions tend to be more in line with what's good for you because now you're starting to feel good. And who doesn't want to do things that continue that? So it's really so related. It's interesting that we're talking about it in this regard because it's very related to our health, is starting from that depth of consciousness.
Yeah, and there's a lot of science behind that, what you said. It's the reason, but that experience of unbounded awareness during TM, which is very joyful experience. When you come out of meditation, you honestly do have more degrees of freedom. It's like the mind just got a bath. Stress has been washed away with each session of transcendental meditation. It's practiced at 20 minutes twice a day. Adults do it 20 minutes twice a day. Each session is like just a mental bath. A lot of stress is released and eliminated. So when we come out, we do have more freedom to make choices and to change our old habits. And the reason for that, and the research has shown, during the 20 minutes of TM, during that session, the brain function becomes very orderly. This is called brain coherence or EEG coherence, and this has been shown through brainwave studies or EEG studies that during TM, the brain goes into a state of what's called high coherence, where different parts of the brain are communicating with each other that previously weren't, and they're producing the same brain signal, the same frequency and phase relationship of the EEG signal. So when you come out of meditation, there are different connections that have been made, and suddenly things that seem very problematic to you and difficult to change become much easier. And also you see much more clearly why they're bad for you. You feel it. That's why my patient, for example, and the one you just mentioned, it was almost a spontaneous thing, and that he said, I never looked back, because it became distasteful for him because his brain was different.
Right, yeah.
His brain was hooked up better, and he was seeing things more clearly.
And I've seen that in other things, with alcohol consumption and other behaviors that may be unhealthy, that people come and tell me that, oh, yeah, this just dropped off. So it's, I want to start moving into the more details. Ayurveda is an interesting science, and rather than treat the body as a collection of cells, tissues, and organs, it does treat the body from its source. So I'm glad we established that, because I said earlier that it's important to understand the profound science of Ayurveda, which includes the mind. And as we've been saying, transcending is very helpful for improving health. The emphasis generally of Ayurveda is on prevention and longevity, and it has numerous modalities that help us treat imbalances. So can you tell us, you said you were going to talk to us a little bit about the doshas. Can you tell us a little bit about them now? Because that tends to be that one part of Ayurveda that is out there that people do know about.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and it's very interesting, and it's, yeah. So as I mentioned in Ayurvedic theory, the underlying field, which is intelligence, which is abstract and not material, but manifests as material structure, and similar to the way quantum physics describes the emergence of the physical universe, according to Ayurveda, it emerges, and this is the body as well as all of nature, in three streams or three modes. And these are called in Ayurveda the three doshas, and they have names. The three doshas are Vata, that's spelled with a V as in Victor, Vata, Pitta with a P as in Peter, and Kapha, spelled with a K. So Vata, Pitta, and Kapha are the three doshas, and the three doshas are, in Ayurveda, considered to be the three basic governing principles or governing entities or energies, there are different words you could use, to that govern the body, the functioning of the body. And one of the most important core principles of Ayurveda is that the doshas should be balanced. That what we want to achieve in our life for our health is balance of these three, because when they're balanced, then they create good health. In their balanced state, they unlock the body's ability for self-healing and self-repair. But when they're out of balance, they obstruct the body's ability for self-healing and self-repair. And I'll just read to you this lovely quote from the most ancient of the Ayurvedic texts. Ayurveda has the most ancient texts of medicine on the planet. They go back 3,000 years. This is from the Charaka Samhita, the oldest one. It says, doshas are three, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. In their balanced state, they maintain the body. When imbalanced, they afflict the body with imbalances and diseases. So we always want to strike a balance between these three, among these three. So, okay, so what are these three? Vata, dosha, is the principle of movement and transport. Vata governs all movement in the body, indeed in nature. Vata has constituent elements according to Ayurveda theory. There are 5 basic elements in nature, and that sounds, people think, oh yeah, like earth, water, fire, and air. Yes, and Ayurveda adds space. So it sounds kind of medieval, but actually this is very advanced knowledge. It runs parallel to some of the most cutting-edge findings of modern quantum field theory, which talks about how the underlying field first manifests as 5 spin types, 5 quantum spin types. When you look at that literature in physics, the descriptions of those 5 quantum spin types are very similar to the way Ayurveda describes the 5 underlying elements of space, air, fire, water, and earth. Well, Vata dosha is a combination of space and air elements. So if you think about space and air, what would that be like? Space and air together gives rise to qualities like this, and these are the qualities of Vata. Vata is moving, it's quick, it's light, it's cold, and it's dry. So those are the qualities of Vata. And when Vata is very active in the body, then the body runs in that direction. Things that move tend to move quickly. Body weight is light, tend to be cold, and very sensitive to cold. We tend towards dryness, dry skin, dryness internally, like constipation and so forth. Pitta dosha is the underlying principle that governs digestion and metabolism. And the constituent elements of Pitta are predominantly fire. Pitta is the fiery dosha, but also water. So I think of fire water or acid or something like that. And the qualities of Pitta are it's sharp, it's hot, it's acidic, and it's intense. So when Pitta is very active in the mind-body system, then the personality can become sharp and irritable. Person experiences a lot of internal heat and heat intolerance, get hot very easily. And digestion can be great, but if Pitta gets too much, then digestion gets too intense, and you get acid indigestion and hyperacidity, gastritis, acid reflux, ulcers, things like that. And Pitta is also intense. There's a kind of intensity. So you always want Pitta to be modulated. You want all 3 of these doshas to be modulated, which brings out and balance with each other. It brings out all their great qualities, their positive qualities, but not their exaggerated qualities. And then finally, Kapha dosha is the principle that underlies all structure and fluid balance in the body. And the constituent elements of Kapha dosha are water and earth. So this is the heaviest of the 3, and it also has a watery as well as an earthy quality. So its qualities are it's heavy, it's oily, it's slow, it's cold, steady, and soft. So Kapha dosha is, if you think about it, it's almost the opposite of Vata dosha. It's not surprising, except for one thing. Both Vata and Kapha dosha are cold. They have no inherent heat. Only Pitta dosha has the inherent heat. So with the exception of that one shared common property, Vata and Kapha are very opposite. Vata very light, quick and moving. Kapha very heavy, slow, and steady. Like that. I can go on, but go into body types and things like that, but do you want to make any comments?
Yeah, no, this is a very thorough understanding, and this is the point why I wanted you to tell us more, because when you just see a quiz and you click something like, oh, that's me, but there's a more profound understanding here, but we can start to relate to these qualities, maybe naturally, or maybe something's out of balance, and I have too much cold or too much heat, or I have too much fluid, or there's lots of things. So yes, please continue to tell us more about that and explain how we can even benefit from even today's knowledge.
Great. Yes. So there's 2 things about the doshas that are important to know. I mean, there's many things, but 2 especially. Everybody has their own natural state of balance, individual, personalized state of balance, and that's called in Ayurveda, it's called the prakriti, or the nature of the person. It's come to be called the body type, but it's really a mind-body type. And everybody has a mind-body type according to Ayurveda, and there are basically 10 categories, 10 basic categories that everyone fits into, one or the other. And depending what is your prakriti, your Ayurvedic type, that determines an awful lot about what you need to be balanced and healthy. It determines an awful lot about the diet that's best for you to eat, about the kinds of things to expose yourself to and the kinds of things you want to avoid, the kinds of exercise you should do, whether high intensity or more moderate or mild, lifestyle issues like when to get up, when to go to bed, when to eat your main meal, all these things. So this is a huge topic, and I will, before we end, recommend some resources where people can learn more about the science. But basically, it starts with the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha types. So 3 of these 10 are what's called the pure body types, or monodoshic, single doshic types, because even though all of us need and have all 3 doshas, we need them to live and for the body to function, there are some people where one or the other dosha is so much more active and predominant, they appear to be almost like that's all they're made of. So even though the others are there, they're like eclipsed. So the pure Vata type or monodoshic Vata type, that person in general is light, low body weight, and that's okay. That's by nature. But they have a tendency to lose too much weight, and they have to be careful of that. They tend to be mentally very alert and quick, but if Vata gets too much, and this is a vulnerability for them, their mind gets too quick, too tumultuous, and they are prone to anxiety and mood disorders and things like that. Insomnia is a common problem for Vata types. And Vatas are often the life of the party, very lively by nature. They're very enthusiastic by nature. When you sit with a Vata, they often move because that internal movement of Vata keeps them moving. They'll be facial expressions. They're very expressive. They use their hands when they talk. They might be tapping their knee. That's all great, but it can go too much out of balance, and you can get movement disorders. And a lot of the neurological disorders are Vata disorders, things like the Parkinson's disease and so forth, are diseases of excess Vata. Now, so that's the Vata type. The Pitta type, as you can imagine, their main quality that they exhibit is heat. So when that's balanced, it's great. They're very warm by nature. They're very charismatic. They can be very magnetic. Of course, you would want to be with them because of that warmth when it's balanced. And when they're balanced, they make great leaders because they're kind of fearless, Pitta types. When they're balanced, they have a lot of very strong digestion, and they generally have very strong constitutions because of the Pitta. And so they actually enjoy taking risks, and they make very good entrepreneurs and CEOs and politicians, and they're also generally very good public speakers. This is the pure Pitta type. However, when the Pitta gets out of balance, and out of balance generally means too much, then that warmth of personality becomes heat. They become irritable and angry and aggressive. They can suffer from heat intolerance and all kinds of inflammatory disorders. Those are the Pitta disorders, the inflammatory skin rashes, skin disorders, internal inflammations, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, migraine headaches. Well, the different things that have their ultimate source in inflammation are generally Pitta disorders. And then the Kapha type, and Kaphas are moderate in weight, generally middle in weight. And the Kapha type, by nature, is heavier. Heavier means they're more full-framed. They have larger frames, and they're going to be more on the heavy side of the normal height-weight chart. The body, the BMI, body mass index. They'll be more on the heavy side, but shouldn't be over the limit, but they'll always be more like that. But these are people by nature who have, they're very solid, and they feel grounded because of all the earth in the Kapha. It makes them very patient and calm and forbearing, and Kapha type is the kind of person you want with you in an emergency because they stay calm. They're very methodical. They tend to just walk through problems and solve them in a very methodical way. I mean, you'd like them to have a little bit of pitting, vata, tusala move, but they by nature they're very calm and calming. But they have to watch out, of course, for obesity, overweight, and obesity, because they can, if that kapha goes out of balance, they can slip into that fairly easily. And disorders like diabetes, for example, is definitely a kapha kind of disorder. And there are 7 other body types, but they're all combinations of the two. There are 6 bidoshic types: vata pitta, pitta vata, pitta kapha, etc. And then there's 1 tridoshic type, vata pitta kapha. Those are the folks, and they are relatively rare, but those are the folks who by nature have about equal amount of activity of all 3 doshas. But in order to achieve health, each of us as an individual, our goal is to create balance in tune with our constitutional type, not somebody else's. Yeah. And that's very important for people to know.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's why we like to talk about it, because you don't want to self-diagnose because you took a little quiz, although it'll give you some information for sure. But experts like yourself, it goes to a much deeper level, and Ayurveda addresses. They're not saying, oh, this is what you are. They'll figure that out, but they're more interested in what's out of balance so that you can be more balanced. And so most of the lifestyle things that you were mentioning earlier, they are to balance out something that might be off, like the vata's too much, so we're going to calm that down, or the kapha's too much, so we want to do things to mitigate that. So that's when you see an expert in Ayurveda, and they would give you those recommendations.
Yes, exactly. And I will mention, and let me know when we're running out of time. So there's a website, a lovely website, a university website where people can learn more and take courses and gain more knowledge about Ayurveda. I do want to mention some of the most important recommendations, because I'm speaking here to a general audience, and we don't know, people generally won't know their Ayurvedic type until they learn more about it. But there are an awful lot of recommendations that are universal for everybody, and I just want to share some of them. Diet is so important because the body is created out of the foods we eat, and as I mentioned, food affects our moods. If it's in harmony with the cycles of nature, with the way the body functions, then it's going to create a bright, happy mood as well. So one thing Ayurveda recommends is eating fresh foods, freshly prepared. According to Ayurveda, when food is fresh and freshly prepared, it has a quality which is called prana. People may have heard that word, or sattva, which means brightness. It creates brightness of mood, happiness, as well as good health. On the other hand, when food is old, leftovers or highly processed food that's been sitting in a package, and then you eat that food is called tamasic. It means dark. It's sleepy food. It doesn't have that life energy that fresh food, freshly prepared has. And that will tend to create less happy states of mind, more anxiety, nervousness, worry, depression, things like that. And also physical issues, overweight, and dysregulation of the body's natural healing processes. So fresh food, freshly prepared. I know people may think a lot of people's lifestyle revolves around leftovers, but I can talk a lot about this, and we don't have time, how to change that so you can move more in this direction anyway, if not 100%. And a lot of this actually is in the courses that I'll mention. Favor whole foods rather than highly refined foods. I'm sure a lot of the viewers know that already. Here's one from Ayurveda that's kind of new to most Americans. Avoid cold foods and beverages. Now, okay, wow, does that mean ice cream? Let me put ice cream on the side. Because the answer is, also we want to be reasonable and happy and so forth. And there's habits that we've established that are long-standing. And also there are times of the year, like summer, where cold foods can be fine. But in general, the problem with cold, especially cold beverages, ice-cold beverages, is they do tend to put out the digestive fire, what's called the digestive fire in Ayurveda. In Western terms, it's just the enzymes and acids that create digestion that are designed by nature to function at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And so you put down a ice cold beverage with the ice floating in it, you just had a temperature of about 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a huge differential. That's just going to disrupt the enzymes functioning. And so that's an analog for understand why Ayurveda has recommended from time immemorial avoiding cold foods and beverages. Kathy, I'm going to stop because I don't know how much time we have left and whether.
Well, I'm absorbed in your discourse because it's so valuable. But we have about a little more than about 5 minutes or so. So give or take, if you can give us that information, how we can find out more too, because at 5 we get put off automatically. So I don't want to be cut off. I want to be able to respectfully end the show. So we have about 7 minutes or so.
Okay, great. Let me do that. One thing I do want to share, or two things before I go there, is a couple of behaviors in terms of eating that will help promote good digestion, because Ayurveda feels that digestion, the power of our digestion, is equally as important to the food that we eat. Because if we don't have good digestion, you could be eating the most wonderful food, but if the digestion is poor, you won't be able to extract, the body won't be able to extract the nutrition from that food. So it's very important that digestion be healthy as well. A lot of Ayurveda is for improving our digestion. So a couple of points. Try to have regular meal times. Eat breakfast, lunch, and supper around the same time every day. By having regular meal times rather than helter-skelter, it cultures in the body good, balanced digestion. Also, try to avoid rushing meals and sit down to eat. This allows the enzymes to work properly. Give enough time for especially your lunch meal, which I'm going to mention in a moment, is so important. Don't eat on the run. And then the last point about lunch, according to Ayurveda, digestion is sharpest and most keen at the height of the day. This is the height of pitta during the day, about noontime, or now we're on daylight savings time, about 1 p.m. Somewhere around that, you should have your main meal, because at that time of day, because pitta is so strong, digestion is so strong, you can eat a much larger quantity of food, take it in and get nourishment from it, and not create toxicity from it, not create obesity and all kinds of issues that come from poor digestion, which leads to various forms of toxicity. This is another principle in Ayurveda. So try to make lunch a very healthy meal, the main meal of your day, and have dinner a bit lighter. And there's a lot of strategies for helping people to do that in the courses, and now so I'll direct people there. So the best resource that I know of for this information is the Maharishi International University website, and this is miu.edu. So MIU, Maharishi International University, is our university, fully accredited university. It's based in Iowa, and it's a full credit university offering degree programs through doctoral programs. And they have a program at all levels on Ayurveda and integrative health, and a very nice distance learning program, which is there's degree programs that people may want to take advantage of, but there's also a host of non-degree, just online, very, very, very nice programs about Ayurveda, and a number of them are free of charge. Some of them, they do have a small tuition fee. If you go on that website, miu.edu, and you click where it says continuing education or online learning, that will bring you to those courses and those sites.
Well, I think we're definitely getting the understanding is there's a lot to understand, and it would be nice if you took a proper training course, even if it's at a beginner level, just to get some of these principles, because even these few things you've mentioned, And as you said, they're a change for a lot of people. No leftovers, for example, and less ice in the glass, that kind of thing, or no ice in cases. So these are like some changes to make, but once you start doing it and you see that the digestion is more efficient and it's better and you feel better and lighter, it's not really a hardship. It does take a little bit of attention to make a few of these, and these are just a few. And as we were discussing about the doshas, there would be some more specific recommendations based on what that person's physiology would require. So we got a minute or two left. I want to thank you, Stuart, for your knowledge. And clearly you know a lot. You've done a lot in this field for a very long time. One of the things that you've been doing lately, and unfortunately we don't have a lot of time to discuss it, but you have been overseeing a project to bring the TM technique to healthcare professionals across the country. And I'm involved in one of those projects here in our little local area, and I'm having some really wonderful experiences with it. The people are enjoying it. I taught one person who's an ER doctor, and she just has been enjoying something. She said, just sitting down to close my eyes. She said, my job's stressful anyway, and with this past year, it is intensely stressful. So just to have an opportunity to balance the physiology and be less tired and more clear. And so I want to thank you for that, and thank you for being on the show today. And we have about 30 seconds for our final comments. Do you have anything you want to say to our listeners?
No, that's beautiful. Thank you, Kathy. And I appreciate what you said about that program. It's called Heal the Healers Now. Through the generosity of donors and corporations across the country, we've been able to offer instruction in transcendental meditation free of charge to frontline healthcare providers in hospitals and medical centers around the country. And very happy that you've been able to do that locally in southwestern Connecticut. We have 6 major studies going on now at some top universities, and the initial results are really dramatic with these frontline providers. 70% reductions in anxiety, 60% in sleep disorders after just a matter of about 1 month of practicing transcendental meditation. So fulfilling to be able to bring this to our very deserving frontline healthcare workers.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you were inspired to continue to explore the healing science of Maharishi Ayurveda. There are degree programs that you can obtain, as Dr. Rothenberg mentioned, and in fact, since this initial broadcast with Dr. Rothenberg, the degrees available on Ayurveda at Maharishi International University have become the most popular that they offer, and they're also distance learning and on campus. So you could access that at miu.edu and see what they offer. Another website for more information and products called Rasayanas is mapi.com. So I wish you health and happiness and look forward to speaking with you again.